You're listening to the Hello World Podcast number 53. My name is Sean Wildermuth and I'm your host. The Hello World Podcast is where you can hear from some of your favorite developers, authors, and speakers about how they got started in this business and the decisions they made along the way. We go way back to their first computer, their first code experience, and their first job. We've decided not to have a sponsor for the podcast, but if you want to support the podcast and the kinds of things that I do, feel free to visit my Pluralsight courses at shawnw.me/psauthor. That's shawnw.me/psauthor. This includes my newest course on ASP.NET best practices, including entities, validation, and view models. You might have noticed the long hiatus between episodes. I had a little trouble on our way back from Thailand, but now I'm back in the States, and you should be hearing more episodes, one every 2 weeks from now on. On today's show, we get to talk to Barry Dorrans, more often known as Blowdart on Twitter. Barry is the security czar for the ASP.NET team, which means he gets to look at the framework, tools, and template code, searching for potential insecurities and sometimes even fixing them. He also triages publicly and privately reported vulnerabilities before getting someone else to fix them, which means he gets to have all the fun and none of the responsibility. He is rude and objectionable, and on Twitter as @Blowdart. Barry's always been one of those guys I knew from afar on Twitter and from his experience speaking at conferences. He's always been a quick wit and one that never let anyone get away with anything. So I thought he'd be a great guest for the show. As you'll hear today, the way he got started is not unlike a lot of our other guests, but he has a very unique perspective. I think you'll enjoy it. I'm excited that our first show back after quite a big lap is going to be with Barry Dorrans. How are you doing, Barry?
I'm good. You've been away for a long time, you slacker, going away and enjoying yourself. It's ridiculous. It was ridiculous.
Somewhere in the universe, someone wanted me to come home, so they broke my arm. And, sometimes I need that sort of hint.
Well, you were just being punished for the universe was punishing you for taking such a long holiday, really.
It really seems that way. I have to admit.
Yeah.
It was exactly 1 year and 1 day into the trip when it happened. Promised it would be 1 year, so they were like, "What are you doing?"
A year of holidays is just not the American way. You have 2 days and that's it.
Well, let's be honest. I was working most of the trip.
Of course you were. Yes, you were working in foreign climes. That still counts as a holiday. Don't even try that.
We didn't enjoy any of it. At least that's what I tell everybody.
Yeah.
So as you've probably heard all of the podcasts. Wait, no, you've never heard the podcast. But anyway.
I don't listen to anyone's podcast. My commute is 20 minutes, so that's never enough time to do a podcast, unfortunately.
That's true. So we want to know how you got started in this crazy business of ours. Did you have a computer growing up? Did you have a passion growing up for computers?
So let's see. I didn't have my own computer until I was about 13, because I'm old. I'm over 40. So I was born in 1970. So from the 70s up through the 80s, home computers weren't that much of a thing. And then I was at school, and the school had this rectangle that had 8-inch floppy drives.
Nice.
2 of them, and it hooked into an old black and white television. And that was the first computer I got my hands on, which was a Research Machines 380Z.
Wow.
And the manuals were there. And so I read the manuals. Our headmaster was the person that was teaching computers at that time. So I read the manuals and got ahead of him.
Is this the last time you read a manual?
No. It depends on what it is. I read manuals sometimes because, frankly, that's far easier than having to write the darn things.
That's true. Yes.
I've got the details of this thing in front of me. It was a Z80 microprocessor, 56K of user RAM, but I severely doubt ours had that much because that would have been expensive, and it ran CPM.
Oh, nice.
Yes, and a text-only monochrome video card. which
Well,
also
with CPM is kind of what you got anyway. I mean,
that's true. Apparently, it came with, and you could enhance it to a 320 to 192 high resolution graphics board. Yeah,
yeah, that's almost 1,000 pixels. Yeah. Oh,
it is.
Maybe my math isn't right. I'm sure someone's going to correct me later.
Yeah, that's fine. It's your math that's wrong, so I don't care. I'm not the one making the mistake here.
That's true. And
Wow.
so I can tell from your accent you're from Finland. Is that right? Do I have that accent wrong?
No, I think I'm from Norway, aren't I?
Norway. Okay.
They're all the same. Now you will get emails.
Now we will certainly get emails.
Finland, Norway, Sweden are one homogenous block of ex-Vikings. So I am from Northern Ireland, just to make it perfectly clear that it's not Ireland, the country. It's Northern Ireland, which is a separate province that's part of the UK.
I learned that.
Yeah, Americans get confused about what is and isn't the UK and what is and isn't England, especially when I watch American international news. You see them reporting, that something has happened in Wales and they're still calling it England because they think England is all of it.
Well, Britain and England are the same thing, aren't they?
I think you really ought to do podcasts with Scottish people and try that on and see what happens.
Well, I don't understand them at all.
Well, that's true. Yes, they're very hard to understand. It's all the whiskey.
Now we're certainly going to get letters.
Yes. Well, emails.
Yes.
Physical letters would be really cool, though.
It would be, actually. Yeah.
Yes.
My mailing address is... No. So you had these computers at school, and at 13, did you get one of the little Sinclairs that everybody got at that age?
Yes. So I got a Sinclair ZX Spectrum, the 48K version, because that was the bigger version.
Nice.
I basically bugged my parents for a year and a half to do this, and I sold my Scalextric set to help fund it because my dad was a builder, my mom didn't work, so saving up for that must have been really, really hard for them. So I sold train sets and a Scalextrics and put some money towards it. And I can remember going around and looking at all the computers at that time. There was an Acorn Atom, there was the Spectrum, there was a Dragon 32, and I can remember that these things weren't sold out of stores. The dealers were basically, they had everything set up in their spare rooms, so you'd go to look in people's houses.
Yeah.
To see what the latest computing thing was, and I came away with the ZX Spectrum with the understanding that I would use it for educational purposes.
Of course.
Suckers. There were a lot of games, which is interesting. So this, I think it's next week it comes out, but there's the Rare collection on Xbox One that has about 5 to 10 of the ZX Spectrum games that I used to play. So I'm going to be using, the $500. Well, oh no, it's gone down in price now. I have no idea what the Xbox One price is, but I got it on day one because I'm like that. So I'll be using a $500 machine and an HD TV to play all these old games, and it will be glorious. I'm going to probably set Witcher to one side.
That's a good call.
Yeah, we'll set Witcher to one side and just go back and do all the old stuff.
I still have my Commodore 64 emulator on every laptop that I carry, so that I can play certain games. So I understand the allure.
Well, the Commodore 64 was the most expensive machine at that time.
Yeah.
So, if you had a Commodore 64, your parents were rich.
My parents weren't, but I had gotten in a terrible accident and gotten a little settlement. And my first request, from the hospital bed was, when we get the money, I need a Commodore 64. So, yeah.
So you were spoiled still. They could have used that to perhaps pay medical bills.
Yeah, no. I think the limp is worth it.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. And so you finally got this machine home and lots of games, but did you ever get,
BASIC was built in. So I had a friend, Andrew, who had a computer as well. And basically we started writing text adventures.
Nice.
Because those were interesting. They had a bunch of them. I mean, you had The Hobbit, which was a text adventure, and I still have a fondness for text adventures, the Zorks of this world, just because it's down to your own imagination.
Absolutely.
So, my imagination is rather vivid. So it helps fill these things in. So we started competing against each other to write, the best adventure and the best parser for, go left, go north, go right, inventory control systems, and all that sort of thing. And everything got saved out to tape. And there were just lines and lines of spaghetti. But before it got to that, there was the Visual Basic, good Lord. There was the basic manual. And so I read that and figured out how to do things and started you looked at games and you're trying to figure out how they did it. So games that are like car games, which is like an A going up the screen and there are eyes that you have to dodge. So started off with that, started getting subscriptions to, magazines that had listings that you could type in, and learning from the listings that you would type in and learning that, it's really, really hard to type in 3 to 4 pages of code.
It is. And not make a mistake.
Yeah, and there were plenty of mistakes made. And so from the Spectrum, then I upgraded to the BBC Model B, which was the standard education machine at the time. It was also the machine that Elite first came out on, so I'm very excited by Elite on the Xbox as well. I'm not a great PC gamer. If I boot my PC up for games, it's for strategy things like Civ, whereas I just like the instantaneousness of pressing a button on the Xbox and not having to worry about keeping my graphics drivers up to date.
Well, I understand that, but I will admit that I use an Xbox controller to play Elite on the PC.
Ah, okay.
I'm not exactly sure what the idea there is, but on the road, obviously, I didn't have an Xbox.
Yes. Are you going to be getting the new flappy paddle one?
Yes, I will. I'm going to spend $150 on a controller as soon as I can. It's kind of crazy.
As soon as they're out, because I believe they're taking pre-orders now.
Oh, wow. And I will admit that I bought an Oculus to play Elite, because I played the original Elite on the 64 when it came out. Which is right after that.
The original was the BBC, darn you.
I understand.
Don't you count your ports? Ports to lesser platforms as the original.
Well, since the BBC machine wasn't available in the US.
That's true.
Yeah.
The BBC machine was great. And actually, what's interesting is what we're doing now is that they're giving away little PCs on a chip. That was announced a few weeks ago. So the BBC are doing something again like that in conjunction with Microsoft, and you'll be able to program it, and it has like little location sensors and a bunch of other stuff. So I'm desperately trying to get a hold of one because I kind of want to play. So it's nice that they're being given away pretty much to every 12 and 13-year-old in school in the UK.
That's wonderful.
Isn't it?
It is.
I'm really excited by that.
Yeah, the idea of sort of fomenting that excitement we had. There seemed to have been a period when a lot of the kids I ran into, their understanding of computers was just, the browser and searching things on Google, right? That was the extent. That there wasn't that natural curiosity we had as kids. We're about the same age, and so that first time I booted a VIC-20 and got the basic prompt and was able to do something with it. That was a really, important moment in my life. And it sounds like the same with Sinclair for you. Well,
yeah, pretty much. I've just got this thing in front of me now. It's called the BBC Microbit.
Nice.
And it's basically a breadboard.
Nice.
And it has a couple of buttons and a couple of lights and a bunch of other stuff, and it just looks it looks so cool. And everyone in year 7, so that's ages 11 to 12 in the UK, will get their very own.
Wow.
So it has an ARM chip and some things from Samsung and Farnell and stuff like that. So maybe that will kick off an entire new generation. But I really, really want one. So I'm sending emails backwards and forwards to people in the UK going, where is mine? And it starts off with touch develop, and then they can use C++. So we have 11 and 12-year-olds using C++ to code for this thing.
Well, maybe that's not a good idea.
Well, it's not going on the internet, so we're not so worried about buffer overflows or exploits.
That's true. That's funny. So did you end up going to school to college for computers? Was that your path?
I kind of did, yes. So in the UK, when when I was young, we had O levels at age 16 and A levels at age 18. So your O levels basically were the things that got submitted to college saying, here's what the exam results you got at 16. And they would then send you back a conditional offer saying, okay, if you get these results in your A levels, then you can come to college. And I'm really bad at exams. So I sit down and everything flees my brain. You can also see this if you watch me present. When I present, there's nothing pre-prepared aside from the slides, and whatever I say is on the fly. Because if I practice and practice and practice, and I know a lot of people do, it's why, if you watch Scott Hanselman present, he's down to the second.
Yeah,
in his timings, and I'm kind of jealous of. It's just not something I can do because everything will flee my mind at that moment of stress. So I completely botched my exams. I got a D, an N, and a U, but it was enough to get me in, not to a degree course, but the one below a degree. So there's Bachelor's of Science, and then there was a higher national diploma in the UK, and so I got into a polytechnic, which is like a working university. So you do part of it and then you go out and work for a little bit. And the first year they started teaching us COBOL and Pascal. So by the end of the first year, I was entirely bored because this is just not good. This is not real world. I don't know what you expect to do. And so because I was supremely uninterested and there was a bunch of other stuff going on, I basically dropped out.
Sure.
And I went back home with absolutely no prospects whatsoever. But because Northern Ireland was a very, very high unemployment area, and because that high unemployment led to boredom, and boredom in Northern Ireland in certain circumstances would lead to you being ripe for picking by the paramilitaries, the UK government threw a lot of money into trying to get young people to work. So I took advantage of that.
Nice.
There was a ceramics firm. Now, when I say ceramics, I don't mean pots and pans. I mean capacitors.
Right.
So they were a division of Kyocera, who still exist. They make gorgeous printers and ceramic knives and still ceramic capacitors and a bunch of other stuff. So they did that. And I basically wangled my way in one of the youth unemployment things. So they got me for a year for free. And during that year, I started off, changing backup tapes, going around and making sure printers still had paper in, hoovering the printers because they're dot matrix printers and they got covered in dust. And if you didn't hoover them, it was a fire risk. And I sort of graduated from that after about a month and a half when they realized that I sort of vaguely could figure things out on my own. I started doing technical support. So, they would ring down and I would do all the jobs of please go and see if this accountant or this secretary or this manager has remembered to plug their machine in.
Right.
It was pretty much crawling around under desks and then going, no, you've forgotten to turn it on. So I had that. And it used to be that if people did this 2 or 3 times in a week, I would start finding them chocolate biscuits. It's like, okay, next time I expect chocolate biscuits. So I would wander back with chocolate biscuits stuffed in my mouth at the age of 19. I must have been an annoying little brat. I really must.
How things have changed.
Yeah, that's true. Now I'm an annoying big brat. So from there, this was all, so it was IBM mini computer system 38s and AS400s, 320, 3270 terminals. Those things were heavy. So, then I got on cabling. So I was running the token ring cables everywhere and diagnosing token ring problems because, someone's forgotten to plug things in. And so the token then escapes from the ring and nothing works.
I think that was an early Hobbit story, wasn't it?
Well, yes, the one token ring to rule them all.
Yes.
Then we got IBM delivered us a PS2 because that was a computer long before it was a console.
Yes, it was.
And it had a token ring card in it. And the token ring card would allow us to talk to the AS400. And we had a Kyocera printer and we needed to print barcodes. And OS2 came with Microsoft Basic. I believe it was Microsoft Basic. It still would have been at that point because
Yeah, I think so.
they were still on speaking terms. And so the Kyocera printer had commands that you could send it. And so I figured out how to use Basic to send the commands. And then I started saying, okay, well, here's an export job on the AS400 that's dump things out. And I can take that and I can parse it. And then I can tell the printer to print the barcodes. And that was that. That was like the first real
paid to program moment.
Yes, paid to program moments. Between that and setting up NetWare and play, there was a game in NetWare. I can't remember what it was, but it was like a multiplayer, the first multiplayer maze game that you could run around and kill each other. So that was really it. So after a year, the placement was done. I had a college sweetheart, and I went back to Liverpool where I was in college, and basically I lied my way into a job. I went for a job interview for a company that wrote fitness testing software. Uh-huh. So, you do your bike cycling thing, and it would measure your heart rate and calculate your max VO2 and stuff like that. And it was all written in C. And basically, I bought a copy of Kernighan and Ritchie 3 days before the interview and read it. And I didn't have a PC. I didn't have a C compiler. I just read K&R, and then I blagged my way through the entire interview and got the job. Wow. I believe my starting salary was £4,600 per annum. Before
wow.
Four-figure salary, and to me that was quite good for a job I just lied my way into.
Absolutely. Well, there's a little story that I don't think I've ever told anywhere. But when I first came to, I'm trying to think of where it was. I think it was Boston. I had not learned Visual Basic before. I'd done all these proprietary little languages that died, Borland's Paradox and a lot of DBase and things like that. And I couldn't find a job using any of them in Boston. And I saw a VB3 listing. And so I bought the book the morning of the interview and lied my way into that job. Luckily, the company's gone, and I'm not going to get any letters from them now. But that was... that fear of that interview when you're like, I know I've never written anything of it, but I think I can apply. Everything has a for loop, right?
Yeah, I've got the sneaking suspicion that the guy that interviewed me, hello Rob, if you're listening, I lost all contact with him in the last 20 years, but I can still remember his first name. His name was Rob, and yeah, I can't remember any more than that. I'm pretty sure he had a good idea that I was blagging it. But he set a bunch of tests, and there was a C test book called "Enough Rope to Shoot Yourself in the Foot," which talked about forgetting your terminating zeros on strings and stuff like that. So some of the questions were from that, and that was a great learning resource, that book. But I got the job. It was Borland C. We used Black Ice for debugging, which is something I still miss because it was a wonderful debugger. And I wrote fitness testing software for 5-6 years.
Wow.
And that was in Chester, which is on the England-Wales border, because they are different. I will just underscore that again.
Did you say Britain? Wait, God, it's very confusing.
Great Britain. Britain is great, okay? We're so great, we actually have it in our name. And, that's why America's so jealous of us.
That is. Yeah, we're just united.
Emails, yes. Oh, yeah, really, you're united. Okay.
We have to keep on reminding people.
You have to keep, and then you have your presidential campaigns, and it shows you're really, really not.
Yeah, that's not the only reason we're not united. But in any case, so you did this for about 5 years, and did you really enjoy the writing C++? Was that something that you became passionate about as a language?
I did, and then what happened was, there wasn't enough progression.
Sure, the 5-year job.
No, it was myself and my boss. So there's nowhere to go.
Sure.
So it's one of those things where, if you stay in a job, even if you enjoy it, your pay rises are always going to be limited compared to what you will get when you move.
Absolutely.
So I started job hunting, and I moved across to a company that did online services. This is online services before the internet. So this is using modems, using Windows software that would dial a modem, go get stuff off the back end and pull it back. And I worked on travel booking software for them.
Oh, nice.
So it would, they had a shell that hosted a bunch of plugins that was written in Visual C++ and MFC, and then there were also bits of VB scattered around. But it started off as Visual C++, and then eventually moved to VB as we figured VB was, less mistake prone.
And the future, really, the future of everything.
Well, the interesting thing was, the future, the reason I left that role is the fact that the CEO didn't believe that the internet would ever take off.
That's a good call.
Yeah. So, he was so, he had all these proprietary modem things, and all his stuff was on dial-up. So it took people a long time to convince him that perhaps exposing things over TCP/IP was a good idea. But yeah, when he made his pronouncement, he didn't think the internet would ever take off. I think a bunch of us realized that, okay, it's time to move on.
Yeah, absolutely. And how long were you there?
Oh, I don't know. It was such a long time ago. I think that one was probably 3, maybe 4 years.
Now, your role these days is in security at Microsoft. Am I incorrect about that? Did I?
No, you're correct. So
And where did this sort of foment in your old jobs?
When something went horribly wrong. So from the online services, I hopped from banking. I went through banking to consultancy stuff, and some of the consultancy stuff involved putting things actually properly online and putting them online for governments. And that's when it became a little bit more interesting.
Sure.
It also involved DRM and music. So I think probably DRM was my first foray into security. I can see people, seething with hate as they listen to this. So you know what?
It is your fault. WMA is your fault. Do I have that wrong?
Eventually, we did end up using WMA and the DRM stuff for that, but it was DRM for free music. So what would happen was you would give away music for free. So the latest boy band or Kylie Minogue would put their. I was so pleased when it was Kylie Minogue stuff because we get the Kylie Minogue videos before they were public, which made me happy. I'm still a big Kylie fan. I have her autobiography on my bookshelf, and it's signed because I queued up with one of my friends to get them signed. But we were giving away things that were a month in advance, so they were previews, and the DRM would turn them off on the day that you could actually go out and buy it. So I thought that was a reasonable use of DRM.
Absolutely.
And this was before the UK made it legal to actually rip CDs onto MP3s, which I think only became legal about 10 years ago. And then last week they made it illegal again due to a poorly worded law. It's like, oh, for heaven's sake. So yes, there was that. And it was video hosting, and then people, because these things were on the internet, started trying to attack it, and so so there was that.
And so I get the impression from your tweets and conversations we've had that you're pretty passionate about the security space. This isn't just we needed somebody to do it, but that you're sort of charged with how dangerous the internet is.
Well, I think it was more a case of ego originally. It's like, oh no, I've done something bad and somebody's broke it. Therefore, I need to figure out how to stop them because it's embarrassing.
Sure.
And there's still an element of that. It is embarrassing when you see a bug come into trustworthy computing that raises an MSRC case, and you realize it's something that you probably should have caught. So there is still a big personal, embarrassment motivation behind that.
I can see that.
It's also about educating everybody else. It's because I don't code a lot now, I'm basically reduced to coding demos and scenarios to make sure that things work the way I expect them to work, or trying to reproduce the security bugs that MSRC forward to us.
Right.
It's everybody else's code. So, it's .NET Core, it's ASP.NET, it's MVC, still even WCF, because we still support and we still add security features to WCF. But it's education as much as anything else. So you're sitting there in the reviews and you find something and then you go, okay, there's this and here's why.
Yeah.
Here's why is important, because for some folks on the team who are very developer focused, they want to make it easy for developers.
Sure.
Whereas I want to make it secure, and sometimes those two things are in conflict.
Sometimes.
So, for example, sometimes they are. So, for example, with the .NET execution stuff with DNX, in the latest version, it comes out with Visual Studio 2015. The default environment is production. So when you copy your ASP.NET 5 DNX applications to a server, that server by default is set for production. So you don't get any useful debugging screens. You just get like a screen that says something has gone wrong. It turns all the logging off and a bunch of other stuff. But that makes it really hard for developers, because you like the logging, you like the debugging screens. If you look at the templates, there's an if statement for environment, and it was a fight to make to have us do the right thing security wise.
Sure.
Because Visual Studio will set the hi, I'm in a development environment, and it passes that flag through. But of course, there are lots of other editors. So there's VS Code, there's OmniSharp, there's running things on Linux and on the Mac and all the rest of it. And until those things realize that they need to pass this flag down, they're going to get a slightly less friendly developer experience.
Absolutely.
But it's a lot more secure by default.
Sure.
And we're trying to do that. There's been a great big effort over the last 10 years to make things secure by default and to make it easy for you to do the correct thing security-wise.
And it's interesting because I think you guys have really succeeded there in many ways. And, it's not a perfect world, certainly, but I find it, I don't know if funny is the right word, but there was that period when the mandate to make things secure at Microsoft was, we're going to put every developer into a security class just to make sure that everybody gets it. And then from there, the products got better and that whole phase.
So the requirement is still there for
Sure.
everyone to go undergoes one security training class every year, and we have our internal security conference, Blue Hat, where we invite speakers and people get to go to that for free. And of course, we have the Microsoft Library, which has lots and lots of books, and a bunch of those are security books. Problem with security books, including my own, is like they just get out of date so quickly.
Sure.
But yeah, the requirement is still there, and in server and tools, in the online services, everybody gets mandatory training, security training every year.
And that helps.
There's discussions about the thing. It does. It helps. It's probably not. It's one of those things where you get your training and you remember it for a month until something happens, and then you might remember it again. And at that point, it's probably too late, which is why, we have security check-ins. We have gates that you have to go through. We have tools that you have to run, and you're supposed to undergo through threat modeling. You're supposed to have a security subject matter expert look over everything. And for the ASP.NET team, that's kind of easy because, I'm sitting next to them. Right. So they can bug me at a moment's notice. And SQL have their own security people embedded. Windows obviously have their own security people embedded. So does Office. So does Office Online. So does Azure. So it's there. The problem is sometimes getting people to make use of the resources.
Of course.
Because if they've not made use of them before, they don't know that they're there.
Well, and knowing you, I'm sure the ASP.NET team doesn't want to work with you. I mean, you're just difficult. Am I wrong about that?
I am difficult.
Yeah.
With very good reason, yes. Although it's not that the default answer is no. The default answer is, well, if you want to do it, justify it, and then maybe.
Yeah, sure. I mean,
the default answer is usually maybe.
That's the role of the security guy anyway.
Yeah, to be a worker.
How did you come to work at Microsoft?
I was an MVP. So I was a developer security MVP, and I got an invite to the Microsoft internal security conference. And while I was over, it's like, hey, these two groups have jobs. They both know me. So I emailed them saying, hey, I'm over. You don't have to pay my flights. Why don't you interview me for these outstanding roles?
Nice.
While I'm over, you just have to,
hire me.
Get me one hotel day and money for the flight cost. To change the ticket, and so we did. And
awesome.
Yes, I don't think I blagged my way into this one. I actually think I knew what I was talking about. Mostly.
I suspect that's true. That's true.
I mean, you always have this nagging suspicion that perhaps you're still blagging your way through it.
It comes and goes.
Yes.
I have I've been an MVP for 13 years, which tells me that I am a really bad interviewer to get a job at Microsoft. Because it used to be, I was like, oh, I'm proud I've been an MVP a long time. And then when I started to look at all the people who used to be MVPs that are now employees, I'm like, wow, I must be really bad on a personal level. Wow, this is impressive.
Interviewing is hard.
It is.
It's hard, and it's not.
I don't think I want to. I don't think I have the makeup to work in a big company anyway. So it's a blessing. I'm very happy to be on the outside rather than the inside. But that's just more the nature of my personality, as most people know. Well, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time and getting up early and being late to work just for us. This means a lot.
Yeah, that's fine. If you could just email my manager and say that's why I'm late to work today, that'd be great.
I'll write you a note.
Yeah, write me a note and then send it to Mr. Hunter, and I'll be fine.
I'll be happy to. Well, you enjoy the lovely Seattle weather, and I'll probably see you at the summit.
The Seattle weather is insane right now. It's peaking over 90 or 30 in sensible temperature scales, but it seems to have broken over the last couple of days, which is nice. But I'm pretty sure it'll go back up to 90 again soon.
Oh,
it's
90.
Very annoying.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
when you're not used to it.
I agree. And as someone from Northern Ireland, I'm sure you never broke 90, maybe but once a summer. So.
Yeah, by once a summer. And remember, there's no air conditioning here in homes. Yes, there should be. That's all I'm saying. There should. We've got a little portable air conditioning unit now, just to make life easier. After 3 summers of having it, pop over 90, I'm done. I just can't do this anymore.
Good call. Well, have a great day. Thanks again, Barry.
Yes, sir. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Hello World podcast. Remember, you can subscribe to the Hello